Welcome back to Waters Iron Works. I'm Philip and we are continuing our journey through the ABANA national curriculum. We're getting to the end of level 1, which is pretty exciting. Last time we took a look at the forge welded flux spoon. We're continuing looking at forge welding today with what I think is probably the single best forge welding project if you want to get good at forge welding, and that is making chain links. This chain that you see draped around me here is what I use to get good at forge welding. I just made chain over and over and over again. It's a great project. It is super fast to do. So you get to practice forge welding very quickly, right? It lets you try something, see what happens, learn from it, and do it again. So let's take a look at how we make chain link. For the ABANA specifications, they ask for 6 inches of 3/8 inch round. I'll be honest, my default is 8 inches. I think it makes a slightly easier chain to make, especially as it gets long. But we're gonna go with the ABANA specifications here. ABANA asks for 3 chain links. So we'll take a look at making one with flux, one without flux, and then we'll make the third one, and I'll show you a couple pro tips on how to handle these lengths of chain as they get longer. And then after we see sort of the right way to do things, we'll take a look at some of the common problems I see new people, folks who are new to forge welding struggle with as they go through our forge welding classes. So we'll replicate those problems. We'll take a close look at what it looks like when things go wrong, and we'll talk about how to tell based on what it looks like where the challenges are probably coming from. So hopefully this is interesting for everyone. Like I said, I absolutely love chain making. When I do demos, it is one of my go-to demos. It shoots sparks everywhere. It's a lot of fun, and it is, I maintain, the best way to learn how to forge weld and to get really good at it. So I'm going to toss on some safety glasses. We're going to get the fire going up again here, and we'll take a look at how to do a link of chain in 4 heats. My recommendation, right, whatever tongs you've got work real well. If you've got chain making specific tongs, those are great. These wolf jaw style tongs are pretty common. What you're really looking for here, let me grab a link of chain, is you want a pair of tongs that are going to hold it securely, and as it turns into a chain link, has a way to support this piece that comes out. So these wolf jaw tongs, they're great for 3/8 inch stock. They're long enough that when I'm forge welding, my hands don't get too hot, and with it coming out the side teeth right here, it is an extremely secure grip, and nothing is going to go anywhere while I'm working on it. So a good set of tongs is going to make this a whole lot easier. So for our 4 heat chain, we're going to grab it, put it in, and we're looking at heating up the middle of our chain link. The first thing that we're going to do is bend it into a U shape. So I've got it hot. I'll show you one way to do it here. We bring it to the horn of the anvil. I'm just going to kind of estimate where it needs to go. Once I've got it into a bit of a U, you can put it up on the anvil and hammer that into shape. If it over bends, right, it gets real close on you, closes up like that, the easiest thing to do is just put that on the horn of the anvil, knock it down the horn, and that's going to open it back up. Once we've got these relatively even, we're going to come in and we're going to heat up. We're going to come in and we're going to heat up each of these ends, and we're going to prepare our scarf. I'm going to show you how to do that, and then we're going to talk a little bit about what the scarf looks like and get some close-ups on that. In order to do this scarf, what we're going to do, let's open this up just a little bit here. is we're going to bring it into the inside front corner of my anvil, and I'm going to start hammering on it. And as I hammer it, I'm going to rotate my tong out and away. And what that does is it gives me a wedge shape. Hopefully that's showing up where you can see it. So it's thick on the back here, going up to a thin point. And I've lost all my heat from talking too much, so I'm going to get this hot, but the next step is flip it over and do the exact same motion on the other side. So right there on the corner of the anvil, I start hammering, and my hammer is going in the same space, and I just drag it around. Once I've got that done, bring it to the horn of the anvil, knock it down, knock it down. And what we're looking for is that, I always say, like, everybody's got a friend, right? I want these to be even. I don't want any steel hanging over. And if you look, we can see the thick part of the steel lines up. That thin part right here is over this thick part. This thin part is over this thick part. Our two thicker parts of the wedges give us something that's about equal thickness to the original parent stock. Everything's pretty good. You'll notice this is a pretty small chain link. I might have said it already. I normally do 8 inches. It gives you just a little bit more room while you're working with it. If you're going through the course, ask your instructor if they'll accept 8 inches instead of 6. I certainly would. I imagine most would as well. Let's get this hot, and we're going to put some flux on it. We'll do this one flux, then the second one without. Just try and make sure that we get some in all the cracks there, all the joints, and we've got that nice and protected. I'm using just straight anhydrous borax for my flux. 20 Mule Team borax works just fine as well. Now that we've got this flux, it's going to go back in the fire. I'm going to put the weld side down into the fire, and we're going to get this hot. Forge welding, right, it's a matter of heat. It's a matter of how hard you hit it. The hotter it is, the less hard you have to hit it. The cooler it is, the harder you have to hit it. We can weld before stuff starts burning. If you see sparks, you're certainly at a welding temperature. Take it out, take your hits on your welding. One of the dangers, though, is it is easy to get stuff too hot, and it's not going to weld. So, if I'm being careful about it when I weld, what I look for is the surface of it to start looking, I know I've said this before, like melted butter, right? It's a butter that's been out on a hot counter for a couple hours. The surface of it is starting to get all shimmery. That's the sign that you're ready to weld. You can't look at just color because depending on the carbon content of the steel that you've got, the color is going to change that it's ready to weld at. Mild steel like this is going to weld at a bright white temperature. All right, I see some sparks. We're ready to go there. A piece of steel this size, you've only got a few seconds at welding temperature. So I like to do one weld, couple hits on each side, set that weld straight back into the fire before stuff gets too cool. Take a second heat on it. Everything's closed up at this point. There's not really a need for flux anymore, so we're not going to bother refluxing. right about there. Yep, we are definitely there. So grab it, hot steel, couple hammer blows there. Come back and shape it on the horn of the anvil. Once it's closed up like this, you can give it some side blows in order to make it a little more chain link shaped. And then you can, and this one's a little off center here, but you can decide, do you want a bit of a point on it, or do you want to come in and round this off completely? We'll leave a little bit of a point there. All right, let's quench this and take a look at it. As I take a look at this, it looks pretty good. There's no obvious lines through this. There's a little bit of a line right down there on the inside, if you can see that. That's okay. But overall, this looks like a very nice chain link. This is what you're looking for. You want to make sure that, right, you may have some thinning, but you don't want excessive thinning. It should be roughly the same size as the original parent stock. There should not be any obvious, super obvious weld lines or anything like that in it. The only way to really test these is, I think, destructive testing, right? Cut it. With ones that are a little bit longer, a test that I like to do, this is 8 or 10 inch lengths, put it in the vise, crank it 90 degrees while it's cold, crank it back 90 degrees while it's cold. If you can flex it that much and it sticks, you've got a good weld. If you flex it and it doesn't stick, your weld is not up to snuff, and you should give it another shot. So we've got one. Let's make a second one, and we're going to do this without flux. So my longer links, I like to drop them in the Pritchel hole and then use that to bend them. It's a little bit faster. If you hold your tongs so that you can see through the gap, you can tell whether or not you've gotten things even. As I bring it down here, I'm a little off. Let's bring that up a little bit more. Yeah, my quench stub's getting in the way on me here. Well, not as even as I would have liked, but that's fine. We'll just give it a hit and flatten those out. Back into the fire to heat up the ends, to scarf, and then close it up. Not lined up quite as nicely on that one, but it's fine. Couple blows here to shape it. And again, this one is not fluxed. Back into the fire for a few seconds here. Take one more heat on it. The mild steel gets to welding temperature right before scale starts to melt. It gets to its melting point. So if you get your steel up to welding temperature, take it a little bit higher than it technically needs to be, that scale will melt and you don't have to worry about it so much. So it makes flux a little less important, in my opinion, on mild steel. All round this out here a little bit. Just a little bit of shaping on it. Not strictly necessary, but it makes it look nicer. There we go. Another good looking chain link. So we're going to cool this one down, and then we're going to make our third link, and we're going to use that to connect these two links together. We've got it hot. Over to the Pritchett hole. Maybe I'll be a little bit better on my estimation here. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Heat 1 into the fire. We'll take our second heat. Let's work on our scarf. And we are coming up on what I think is the most challenging part of chain making. It's this little maneuver right here. I cannot tell you how many times I have made my third chain link and forgot to put the other two onto it. Knock that around, everybody gets lined up with their friend. And this is ready to go in the fire. This is getting more complicated now because we've got extra stuff hanging off of it. There's a risk that these things are going to burn. So when we put it into the fire, we want to kind of put it in, really focus on getting that tip that we need to weld down in the fire while leaving both links off to one side. So we've got an easy spot to come in and grab with our tongs. Once we do have this up to welding heat, right, we're going to bring it out. We're going to bring it to the anvil. Hit, and then we roll, keeping both chain links that are hanging off on the bottom. Hit. If we try and go the other way with this, you're going to lose your welding heat right there, right? Everything's going to fall and get in the way. So it doesn't matter which side they're on. You get your hits in, you roll, and you keep these hanging off the side of the anvil and out of the way. So let's give it a shot. A little bit of shaping. Back into the fire for our fourth heat to finish up this weld. Yeah, this one's looking real nice. There we go. Let's quench this one and take a look at them. Yeah, so this one is not as nice as I was hoping it was going to be. Right, we got a bit of a weld line right there. We've got another line right there. Most of it is gone through the insides. Let's take one more welding heat on that. You do have to be careful as you're doing these. If you get too many welding heats on them, you're going to wind up burning stuff at some point, and it is better to throw it out and start again. It's one of the real values of chain links, right? It's not a lot of steel. They're cheap. They're fast. You mess them up, you're going to mess stuff up. Forge welding, you don't feel bad about losing 10 minutes of time and 6 or 8 inches of 3/8 inch steel. Give it a couple blows, focus on those weld lines, make sure they're nice and closed up. I'll reshape it here a little bit. Yeah, let's see what it looks like cold. Yeah, that's looking a lot better. So this weld line is completely gone on this side. On this side, we've got a little evidence of a weld line there. It's all gone through there. I don't know if you can see on the inside, but that's looking pretty reasonable in there. So, is this a perfect weld? I'll be honest, right? I'd rather see that weld line completely disappear like we did on this one and that one. Do I think it's welded? Yeah, I think it's probably solidly welded. I think probably just this little bit right here didn't get completely tacked together. So there are 3 links of chain put together. If you haven't done any welding, I mean, even if you are going through kind of the ABANA course, I wouldn't start with the spoon. I would start with chain. Make 10, 20, 30 links. Really get good at it. Get a sense for what that welding temperature looks like and how things are supposed to work. And it will make everything else much easier when it comes to welding. So now that we've got 3 links that I think would all pass the ABANA curriculum, let's take a look at what it would look like with some links that wouldn't pass the ABANA curriculum. So the back end of it is going to be the same. We're going to get this hot. We're going to bend it into a U. And then we'll start taking a look at where things might go wrong. We're going to look at 2 related issues here, and it comes to scarfing and getting stuff lined up. So this scarf is a little bit tricky to do. If you come in and you just like beat this flat, and you come in and you beat this side flat, right, we've got a taper going this way. What we don't have though is a taper from the inside to the outside. And so then as I come to line these up, assuming I've got enough heat to do this, I wind up with, let me take one more heat. So I've got these lined up. I've got them kind of smushed together, but what we can see when we look at this is that this section is already quite a bit thinner. I've got thin section on top of thin section, right? And we'll go do a weld on this. It's going to result in an extremely flat area. So my chain is not going to maintain the same thickness the entire way through. It also just makes it harder to weld, right? You've got a little less material there. You haven't gotten rid of all of the planes that are gonna not weld up. So we've got kind of a big shoulder there. The same thing on this side. Our tapers are just not in the right direction. So let's give this one welding pass maybe here. Take one more heat on that and finish our weld. Do a little bit of the same sort of corrections that we did before. Try and give this the best chance we can. Dropping it doesn't help. We're going to call this one good enough even with that drop in there. So this is probably welded to some degree, right? But as we look at this piece of steel, we've got our section here that is much thinner than the parent stock. That is not what we're looking for. So make sure that you get those kind of teardrop shaped tapers, that you aren't just hammering stuff flat. This, especially if you're struggling welding and you're taking a lot of passes at it, can get real thin. But if your chain links are coming out like this, where you've got a thin spot, it's probably because your scarf is not being set up correctly. Take a look, make sure that you're getting that nice wedge shape. You're coming in, you're hammering, and you're rolling it out so that you have more blows on the inside part of that than on the outside part. All right, let's get set up and we'll take a look at another very common problem. We've got a chain link set up, ready to go. We've got nice scarves on it. We're gonna take a look here at what happens if we don't get this hot enough when we weld it. And there's a couple reasons why I see this happen. I don't really know which of these is more common, but if you're having problems where it's just not welding, the number one thing to look for is it hot enough when you're hitting those welding hammer blows? There's a couple areas where that might happen, right? One, you just don't have your fire hot enough. You don't have your steel hot enough in the fire. So, we're not at a welding temperature right now. I'm gonna pull this out. I'm gonna come over here. I'm gonna give it some hits. I mean, it's just not welded, right? If you can zoom in on that, you can see that that is just not joined together at all. So that was an instance where I was not hot enough coming out of the fire and getting over to the anvil. The other common reason that I see people struggle with the heat is they don't have everything set up to be fast with the weld. I recommend, if you're just starting to learn welding with chain, while it's cold, not even at a welding heat, practice your motion coming out of the fire, grabbing your hammer, and getting those taps in. If you are not quick with that, it doesn't matter if you're at a welding heat or not, right? It's gonna be below welding heat. So, we're gonna simulate what that'll look like. I'm gonna get this up to a welding heat. Not quite yet. Ooh, actually that was, you know, look. Right, where's my hammer? Get my tongs ready. And now I'm gonna hammer on it. I melted that probably a little bit in the fire because I wasn't prepared, which is where this stuff normally goes. And we can see as I hammer on this, it's starting to separate again. Both melted a little bit and not successfully welded. Right, as you come out of the fire, if you've got to go a long way towards your anvil, if you don't know where your hammer is, if you're looking for stuff, honestly, if you're just slow, you're gonna get to the anvil and you're gonna hammer, and even though you had a great welding heat in there, it's not gonna stick. So, practice. I like to set up, if I'm doing a lot of welding, where I come, I don't even take a step. I always have my hammer on my anvil facing a particular direction so that I know as I go, I'm gonna grab that hammer and I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna get my hits as fast as possible. So, if it's just not sticking, you're taking heat after heat, it's getting thinner and thinner and they're not sticking together, you're probably not either getting it hot enough in the fire or you're taking too long to get to the anvil. You gotta figure out which one of those it is and correct it. We'll take a look at one last one, and that is what happens when these things get too hot. We're up at welding heat. We've got some sparks coming up, you know, in the fire, and I don't notice, right? I'm not paying attention, or my common, I'm worried that I'm not quite hot enough, maybe a little bit more. So, you really let it go for longer than we need to there. Bring it out, start hammering it, and we can see we've got some problems already. Hopefully this shows up on the camera, but we can see we've got some melting going on. We've got some raggedness, right? That's where the steel has started burning away. Let's take another heat on that, and then we'll quench it and take a look at it. We're gonna get it a little hotter than we need to again here. And this is not the stage where, like, we're melting it away completely, right? That's obvious you got stuff too hot. But if you overcook these things, even if they're not melted completely, a lot of times they'll get kind of crumbly. So if you do your forge weld, We'll see whether or not we get it on this one. And you get weird cracks through it. Or parts of it just crumble away. That's a sign that you're overheating your steel. Definitely at forge welding temperature. Gonna let it go. We pull it out. Yeah, definitely hot. Oh, I give that some hits. Let's quench it and take a look and see if we see any of that crumbling. Yeah, so we're seeing a little bit of it. This one's not as severe as they get, but we definitely see that we've had a lot of pitting and stuff like that, right, where it's gotten too hot. I can see around the edges here. Right here especially. See how we're starting to get some cracks infiltrating? I think it starts to look, I don't know that hammering on it's going to actually do anything. Kind of like cottage cheese. This is steel that has been overly heated in the forge welding process. You're going to get all kinds of cracks and stuff on it. Sometimes, you know, you'll have this part get too hot and you'll get a crack right through that part that you're not even hammering on forge welding. So if you see this, you're getting it overly hot, and you need to pull it out sooner, right? I'll admit, right? If I'm making a lot of chain, I'm being kind of lazy about it, I'm doing things quick, I will use those first couple sparks as a sign that, hey, I'm at forge welding temperature, let's pull it out, let's go. If your piece is down deeper in the fire, you might not see those first sparks. If you're not paying attention, you might not see those first sparks. And so if you're pulling things out, even if it hasn't been sparking, right? Those sparks may be getting caught in the top of your coal and stuff like that. But if you're getting this sort of crumbling, it is a sure sign something is overheated. You need to make sure that you're pulling it out sooner and not getting it quite so hot and leaving it at those extreme burning temperatures for so long. So those are the basics of how to forge weld chain. Like I said, it is one of my favorite demo projects to do. I think a absolutely great way to learn to forge weld. Use 8 inches, not 6. You'll be a lot happier with how that goes, especially as a new smith working on chain links. If you have any questions on it, it's a topic I love, please drop them in the notes. Hopefully seeing sort of the right way to do it, and then seeing some of the areas that things commonly go wrong has been useful, and it'll help you figure out how to get this forge welding on your own. It is, I always say, forge welding is not hard to do, but there are a lot of things that you have to do right in short order, and if you don't get those things right, it just doesn't work. But once you get them right, it is an easy activity and something that you will find a lot of enjoyment. There are a ton of projects that you can't do if you don't know how to forge weld, so it is a skill that is well worth practicing. Thanks again, and as I said, if you got questions, drop them in the comments, and we'll see you again soon.